Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Yeah, it's a fire sale on the old dead black media. They're just dropping dead left and right. They can't even give them away at this point. First you had the so-called Black News Channel, and now this. Paramount's trying to find a buyer for BET, but I'm not sure how much they think they can get for it. And by the way, you can tell that the con is on because in the last 24 hours or so, the white media has been trying to make it seem like there's some sort of horse race going on, some sort of bidding war. And oh my God, there's these companies that are so interested. Puff Daddy. Oh, there's a third black-owned company who wants to buy BET. It's all a bunch of doggone cab. This is just hype. It's just a matter of let's try to make people think that someone's actually interested in BET. So these are some phony headlines, most likely bought and paid for. It's PR, just pure spin. I can only imagine what public relations firm got paid to try to put up these headlines and make it seem like someone's actually interested. As if BET is some sort of really hot commodity. If it was, Paramount wouldn't be selling it. We've been banging on the buffoon entertainment network for so long at this point you can't even laugh about it. The house that Bob Johnson built, or rather the slave quarters that he built. BET was funded largely by white money. TBA told you about that book, The $1 Billion Bet, that detailed the rise of BET. Bob Johnson exploited his own people for personal gain. BET may have had some redeeming qualities, perhaps, but it would always be compromised by the fact that white money was behind it. And they said from day one that BET better not ever be political. All you can do is sing, dance, and make jokes. Now, what kind of black television is that? It's black television that white power approves of. White power didn't want a black network to be a threat to them, and Bob Johnson made sure of that. He used the white-owned network that he was the front man for to aggregate a black audience, and he then monetized that black audience to a large extent, conditioning them. He pimped that black audience and went from pimping them into outright trafficking them to white power. Bob Johnson had long been flirting with and making economic pillow talk with the white media, and in 2000 he consummated the relationship by selling BET to Viacom. He got his little old change out of that deal, and when Viacom bought BET, he got $1 billion and ran off to sit on the beach full time. The white media and its bootlick flunkies have lauded Bob Johnson for that, trying to make him out to be some sort of trailblazer, some kind of pioneer. For what? Of course, white power pays very well for selling out your own people. Hey, he became the first black billionaire in America, allegedly. That's quite an accomplishment, isn't it? Well, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, it is an accomplishment, but for whom and for what? Certainly not for black people. Bob Johnson has always been looking out for only Bob Johnson, and as black people, we have to avoid doing business with people who are only looking out for themselves. That always ends in tragedy, but too many times we just keep going for it. That's something that I need black people to internalize. You see, it is not some victimless crime when you give your eyeballs and your time to some bootlicking, butt-kissing, self-interested tool like Bob Johnson, or Tyler Perry, or Byron Allen, or whomever. You empower them by watching them. You give them something that they can use to take to white power and then leverage for their own benefit alone, and what you're giving them is an audience. White power couldn't come up with a vehicle on their own to reach black people, at least not one that we would see as legitimate. So they let Bob Johnson devise one for them, and then when the time was right, they bought it, and lots of black folks kept on drinking the Kool-Aid. They kept empowering the beast. Well, of course, as the old saying goes, if something cannot go on forever, it won't. See, as Forbes points out, BET was worth $2.7 billion when Viacom bought it, but it won't fetch anywhere near that much today. BET's profits peaked in 2013 with revenues of $589 million. Today, it's down to $433 million. They're not in the poorhouse necessarily, but the network has definitely seen better days. I think the most telling indicator of how far BET's fallen is their subscriber count. By 1990, BET had reached over 27 million subscribers. By 2000, which was the sale to Viacom, they were in 61 million homes. They topped out, though, at 91 million subscribers in 2012, and from then on, it was all downhill. By last year, they were down to 63 million subscribers. That means that they lost 1/3 of their subscribers in the last 10 years. And it happened starting in 2012. Now, part of that, of course, is Obama was going into his second term, so Obama mania, the clout that he had with the white media, was clearly winding down. But it also coincides with something else. The black media had been out here since at least 2007 when you guys could see most of us on YouTube, and in that 5-year period, we were already beginning the work of establishing a real voice for black people, somewhere we could go and actually hear the truth. And a large part of it was we were pointing out that these phony black media outlets that you were having pushed in front of you were not operating in your interest. Our work was already beginning to start shedding black people away from these fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools, these puppet organizations for white media, and get you guys attracted to the truth. That's why it started at that time. That's why the downhill decline started then. At the same time, the black folks began to finally accept and realize that what the black media had told people about Obama in his first term, it was undeniable by his second term. They were looking and going, okay, we're disillusioned with this guy, but they were also becoming disillusioned with all of these so-called black media outlets who were owned by white power and not operating in black people's interests. So this happens to be the effect of the new black media. Nearly 20 million subscribers, that's 20 million black people, have tuned out of BET permanently. Gee, what could have possibly gone wrong? The old dead black media is facing real competition. That's what went wrong. See, when BET came on the scene, they had the scene all to themselves. They were alone. There was nobody else that black folks could go to, and as Elijah Muhammad said, people will drink dirty water if they don't have any other alternative. Now, BET tried to brand itself as television for black people, but black folks saw what it was, and a lot of black folks have been sour on BET for a while, and then you had TV One, or as I call them, TV None, who came on the scene, and they tried to brand themselves as television for intelligent black people, but the anti-BET, well, they turned out to show their true colors. They did the same bait and switch that BET had. They aggregated a large black audience, and then they turned around and leveraged that black audience with white advertisers because it was always about the grift. The level of discourse from both of them has been lowbrow, contemptible, and dim-witted because that's their brand, that's their purpose. Now, part of why I bring this up is because the disease that BET suffers from is the same one that these other pretend phony black organizations suffer from. It's why we see everyone from the NAACP to these HBCUs trying to cater to and attract everybody except for black people. They're trying to appeal to every non-black constituency they can, so we see them becoming the self-appointed spokespeople for immigrants and LGBT issues and feminism and so many other things that have nothing to do with black people's interests or our struggle. These front groups who the white media keeps trying to portray as being our spokespeople when they haven't spoken for us in decades, if that. They've been working to separate themselves from being black. It's like with these white corporations when they began shedding their company names and just addressed themselves by their initials, like WWE or Procter & Gamble, who today call themselves P&G. They want to diversify in order to bring in more revenue, so they stop calling themselves by whatever their original service name was, and instead they go by their initials, which can mean anything, or absolutely nothing at all. Now, in the case of the old dead black media, black youth, starting with Generation X, have begun to abandon these phony front groups and gravitate to places like this. They've had to try to make up for this decline in black support somehow, so they're trying to divest themselves of being black and just using their initials as a name with no real meaning. And they can do that pretty easily because these organizations have no real meaning or reason to exist. Speaking of no reason to exist, Byron Allen has crawled out from under whatever blonde woman he's been shacking up with, and now he's trying to get some quickie publicity by saying he's interested in buying BET. Poor Byron Allen. Money can't buy class, and it can't buy a clue either. He so wants for everyone to think that he's some kind of venture capitalist. But he barely qualifies as a vulture capitalist, mainly because he doesn't actually fund anything. He just sues white media companies so he can nag them into giving him a token contract. He's doing a finesse, and it's so obvious. By the way, remember when Mushmouth and Squarejaw were telling us all that our very freedom as black people depended on whether Byron Allen won his latest nuisance lawsuit? They even stood out in the cold in front of the Supreme Court to cheerlead him. Because if he lost his lawsuit, why, it was back to the cotton fields for us, remember that? The black media told you that was all a lie, and we explained exactly why that was. We even had people like Judge Joe Brown explain the nuts and bolts of it. We were telling you Mushmouth and Squarejaw were just trying to finesse themselves a job from Byron Allen, and that neither Byron Allen nor they could be trusted. So, for all of their shameless boot-licking, butt-kissing, and sucking up, what did Squarejaw and Mushmouth get out of all that? How did it turn out for them? Byron Allen didn't win his lawsuit with Comcast or whoever it was he's suing this week. Instead, he reached a settlement, just like he has with all those other suits he's filed. He uses these lawsuits as a way to leverage money and contracts for himself. Now, I don't know if he's necessarily a billionaire liquid, probably not, or if his total assets allegedly equal $1 billion, but either way, with all of this money that he's supposed to have and all of this media landscape that he supposedly owns, how many black people has he done anything for? Remember, that was the very phony promise that he made. Why, this is about getting black people into positions where they can have media ownership, and this is about black people being seen and black people owning a piece of America's landscape as far as media goes. Well, what's he done with that? Is that how it's turned out? Did he do anything for Squarejaw and Mushmouth? Of course not. He forgot all about them just like everybody else has. For the few of you who even paid attention, you remember how Mushmouth would say, "We comin'! We comin'!" Well, now they gone! They gone! And as for Byron Allen, he's supposed to be a billionaire, but just like with that other billionaire, Bob Johnson, he's instead sitting around trying to aggrandize himself. That, and he uses his alternative lifestyle website, The Griot, to push every non-black agenda under the sun. But as we all know, feces attracts flies, and that's why Byron Allen's not the only one hoping to pick up the ailing BET at a bargain price. Tyler Perry has apparently thrown his Burger King crown in the ring. BET also encompasses some other BET knockoffs like BET Her, which almost sounds like Beater, but the only thing BET Media Group has that anyone might be remotely interested in is VH1. Yes, they're still around, though barely. So Tyler Perry is looking to expand his own media footprint. Personally, I think they were all made for each other. If Perry gets BET, he can do a Medea movie marathon every week, and if Byron Allen gets it, he can start showing Drag Time Story Hour to the kiddies. It would dovetail nicely with the current editorial slant at the Griot. But the white media always buries the lead, and what's missing in all this is why BET is in the shape it's in. The new voices of black media, that's why. We began our work in the online sphere around 2007. That's when most of you heard of us because the internet and places like YouTube made it possible where you could find us. Many people, like these pseudo-intellectuals who are pretending to be academics, pretending as if they could hijack the legacy of Dr. John Henry Clark and others, a lot of them, like the old dead black media, they laughed at us. After all, we didn't seem to have much reach in comparison to them. White power and white money gave them a big head start. But we kept at it, and you guys stuck by us, and more of you came to these places. And in time, we've grown, and the number of fellow soldiers and other black voices began to rise, like Tarian Rain, Lisa Cabrera, Vicky Dillard, and others. They knew we were here, but they also thought that we would run out of steam like Squarejaw and Mushmouth did. That we were some sort of passing fad. The old black media tried to give themselves a shot in the arm by getting closer to celebrities and such, infotainment. Black News Channel tried that one, and a number of others did as well, but star power means nothing when you got black people who are finally focused on brain power. The old dead black media, these phony outfits like BET and TV None and others, they had failed to try to disarm us and cripple us out of the gate at the grassroots level. They failed to try to put a lid on the new black media from the outset. So eventually the white media had to use their own apparatuses like MSNBC and Joke Reed to try to attack the black community and our real voice as being Russian bots. But that failed. And we kept putting the pressure on. We were able to make it where Kamala Harris didn't just stumble out of the gate, she fell flat on her face. And then it was time to put the pressure on that wrinkled up racist Joe Biden. And it was these bootlicking fools like the old dead black media who were leading the charge to tell us that we shouldn't be putting any pressure on Biden. Don't be demanding anything. You're going to split the vote. You're going to suppress black voters. No, the failure of the Democrats to produce tangibles for black people is what suppresses the black vote. But they were sitting here saying we need to vote for Biden no matter what. Oh, don't y'all be causing no trouble. Yeah, because the black community doesn't have any concerns of its own. We don't have any interests of our own that need to be protected. The only reason that the black community even exists is so that white Democrats can hold office. I mean, we don't exist for our own interests, that is. But we didn't listen to the old dead black media or any of their chattering puppets online or on television, and that's just as well because none of you were listening to them either. We kept the pressure on. In the end, Biden was forced to make some promises to us, but we warned you that whatever he promised, he wouldn't keep his word. And he didn't. But the fact that he even had to do it at all showed that the landscape has changed. And it wasn't because of the old dead black media. They've been faithfully copying and pasting whatever the DNC tells them to. After 10 years of work, we hadn't yet gotten to the point where we had overwhelming force, but we had reached enough people where we could at least be heard. They weren't going to ignore us out of existence or wish us away. So by 2017, a lot of black people, particularly the under 50 crowd, were listening to us. BET was hemorrhaging support, just like those phony civil rights organizations. White power tried to invent counter-programming like Black News Channel, whose very name was meant to confuse people by sounding like the Black Channel. But you didn't go for a fake putrid knockoff. You were accepting no imitations. You stuck with the real thing. And Black News Channel didn't merely fail, it didn't even get off the ground. It was stillborn. It has no brand value. That's part of the reason why Byron Allen can't wait to try to buy BET. Who the hell wants to watch Black News Channel? It had no viewership. It's nothing more than the legacy of a failure. And that's because Black News Channel had no legitimacy. And as we see, BET at long last has been exposed as having the exact same lack of legitimacy. We told you who Black News Channel was, who was funding them, and what their agenda really was, and there was nothing black about any of it. We made it a point to question and attack their legitimacy because they had none. And we did the same with BET. We've begun bleeding them for support and viewership by getting people on code. See, the Black News Channels and the square jaws and mush mouths, the fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools seem to get a little support, at least initially it looks like it, but of course they all run out of steam soon enough. There's been a lot of people in groups who have tried to imitate the real black media, but it don't work because they can't do what we do, and that's tell the truth. All these counterfeit black media types are all looking for a contract with a white company, and it shows. They know how they have to talk if they want to get on CNN or be featured for one measly segment on 60 Minutes or to get one lousy write-up in the New York Times. Problem is, that's not a track record. That's just a fluke. Flash in the pan. Memories are short. You get one moment on TV and then it's back to obscurity you go. The fakers and phonies, they don't last. But the real black media voices, we're here long after the phonies and frauds have faded away. And the reason we're here is because you are. Black News Channel couldn't do that. You weren't listening to them largely because we warned you the white media would attempt to create some phony black news outlet as their Trojan horse to trick you back onto their media plantation. Now, here's the most important part. Yes, we, the black media, had an impact, but that's only because you have been walking away from the old black media. I've said it for 15 years and I'm going to keep on saying it. You are the prize that everyone's fighting over. It's your eyeballs, your attention, and your actions that people want to control. They want to keep you isolated in their media plantation so that you'll think you're alone, that nobody agrees with you, that you're some sort of fringe outlier and you'll be demoralized. That way you won't be a threat. That way you won't fight when they try to put someone else ahead of you and tell you that your identity is to be a spokesperson for everybody else. But we understood that merely getting you unplugged from the white media and its bootlick puppets isn't enough. You also needed a place that you could come to hear the truth, and people who would speak it. Not the white media's lies. You need a place where you can get information and analysis that operates in your interest, to hear people who are saying what you know to be the truth. You need to know that you're not alone. Keep coming to places like this. Keep engaging with and telling other people about what you've heard here. We're slowly strangling these white media puppets for the support they need by giving you an alternative. You won't hear our kind of talk anywhere else because nobody who's employed by the white media is going to give a platform to what you say. Your opinion, the black consensus, is deadly to white power, and that includes their media. So they can't talk the way we do. Our words, our arguments are so hostile, so detrimental to white power, they can't twist our words. They can't even try to say them. It's just that dangerous. We don't just say words off the top of our heads. We make sure that we're very careful about what we say. That way the message is insulated from misuse, abuse, and perversion. Do not underestimate the value of your involvement. It matters. When we say black media, that includes you too. You're part of this. Without you, I'm not Professor Black Truth. I'm just another black person posting a video online. Without you, we would be just like the Black News Channel. It's no accident or coincidence that all of these clowns have started to go belly up at the same time that they have. It's no coincidence that whenever the white media tries to raise up a few new front men or front women, they fail. There's been many attempts to manufacture an analog to the new voices of black media, many attempts to fabricate their own cherry-picked counter-programming, their own fools who would use a little of our verbiage and then try to sell you on the typical same old white media line. What they want are your eyeballs. That's what this is about. So no matter who buys BET, we already know what the scam is. They'll try to rebrand it, give that rusty, broken-down dog of a network a fresh coat of paint, and claim that buffoon entertainment television is new and improved, when in fact, nothing's changed. Oh, they'll try it. And they'll fail. I can already tell that Tyler Perry's game is going to be remaking BET as a black, female-oriented network, catering to the same hopeless broads who love his movies and TV shows. So if your dating life is in the toilet, don't worry, in a minute BET will be just for you. BET is already dim-witted. Under Tyler Perry, it will become brain-dead. Tyler is in bed with the white media. These are his business partners. Their agenda is also his. He's not about to threaten that. He depends on them for every crumb of his daily bread. So don't expect him to champion the real black consensus. His job is to be controlled opposition. It's been 43 years since BET was launched, or rather since this plot was hatched. 43 years of nothing but empty, pointless noise. And rather than get bigger and better, they only hung in there until a real alternative appeared. And now that too many black folks have jumped ship, Paramount is looking to sell them off. You're the reason this is happening. All these old black media rags and 2-bit TV stations are going belly up. The black people who spend money, the black people who matter, the black people who are going to get things done have been gravitating away from those white media sock puppets. Putting lipstick on this particular pig won't work. Now what will is telling the truth, the very thing they want to avoid. BET's for sale, and I'm sure they'll find a buyer, but whomever purchases it will find out that they're brain-dead content and blatant opposition to what is in our interest. Well, absolutely nobody is gonna buy that. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Jacques Hargett, Antonio Daniels, Sabrina, Maurice Soul, and Brenda McPherson. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.